I learned something brutal at a holiday table. People can smile while they cut you. My mother told me to leave in front of everyone, like I was a stain on the tablecloth, then said, "Stop relying on the family." I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just stood up, folded my napkin, and quietly packed my life into a single suitcase. What she didn't know was that the one thing she'd been taking credit for was actually mine. And by the time dessert was served, she was the one who couldn't breathe. I'm Arya. The dining room smelled like cinnamon, roasted turkey, and expensive candles my mother insisted on lighting even though they always made my eyes water. The table looked like a magazine spread, gold napkin rings, polished cutlery, a centerpiece of pine branches and cranberries. My mother, Diane, stood at the head like a queen overseeing a court she'd trained to clap at the right moments. My stepfather, Greg, sat to her right, nodding as if he understood the art of intimidation as well as she did. My Aunt Linda laughed too loudly at everything Diane said. My cousin Chloe kept checking her phone under the table, bored but still present enough to witness anything explosive. And then there was me, Arya the help, who was also the daughter, the one Diane liked to describe as still finding her way, as if I was lost on purpose. When I walked in with the store-bought pie and a carefully neutral smile, Diane barely looked up. "Arya," she said, like it was a sigh. "You're late." "It's 5 minutes," I replied softly. "It's disrespectful," she corrected, already turning back to Greg. "Some people just don't understand punctuality." I swallowed my pride the way I had for years. I'd learned that fighting Diane was like trying to scream into a hurricane. The wind always won. The first 20 minutes were performative. Compliments about the food, tiny jokes, everyone pretending we weren't a family built on quiet resentments and carefully managed appearances. Diane asked Chloe about her job, then spoke over her answer to brag about someone else's promotion. She asked Greg how the new renovations were going. Renovations she'd insisted on, paid for in part by a family loan that somehow always became my problem. I sat there, hands folded, staring at the flicker of candlelight reflecting in the wine glasses. I was waiting for the moment, because in my family, holiday dinners weren't celebrations, they were stages. And Diane always needed a villain. When the plates were half empty, Diane lifted her glass as if she was about to toast. Instead, she turned her gaze on me. The room tightened around her voice. "So," she said, smiling without warmth, "Arya, tell everyone, how's your little freelance thing going?" The way she said it little made my cheeks burn. "It's going," I said. "I'm busy." "With what?" Linda asked, too eager. "Still doing those logos." I forced a polite laugh. "Brand design, websites, social media packages." "Yes." Diane tilted her head, feigning curiosity. "And you're still living in that apartment?" "It's a studio," I said carefully. "And yes, and you're still behind on your car insurance," Greg added, like he'd been waiting. My stomach dropped. I hadn't told him that. I hadn't told anyone. Diane's smile widened. "Oh, don't look surprised. We talk, Arya. We worry. We try to help." Help, her favorite word, when what she meant was control. I looked down at my plate. "I'm handling it. Are you?" Diane's tone sharpened. "Because it seems like you're always handling something. And somehow it always ends up circling back to the family." My fingers curled under the table. "I haven't asked anyone for money." Linda made a little sound, half gasp, half laugh, like this was entertainment. Diane set her glass down with a delicate clink. "You may not ask, Arya, but you take attention. You take emotional energy. You take space." My throat tightened. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact," she said, voice rising just enough to carry, "that you've been relying on us for far too long, and it's embarrassing." Chloe stopped scrolling. Even she looked up now. Diane leaned forward, her eyes bright with satisfaction. "You're an adult, so here's what's going to happen. After dinner, you're going to leave, and you're going to stop relying on the family." For a second, I thought I'd misheard, like my brain refused to accept the humiliation she was serving me, alongside turkey and mashed potatoes. "Leave where?" I asked. Diane shrugged. "That's your problem. That's what independence is." I glanced around, waiting for anyone to say, "Diane, that's enough." But my family had mastered silence. Silence was how they survived her. Greg didn't look at me. Linda picked at her napkin. Chloe stared at me like she didn't want to be involved but couldn't look away. My face felt hot. My eyes stung. And the old version of me, the version that begged Diane to love her, wanted to cry right there at the table. But something in me went still. Not numb, clear. I stood up slowly, folded my napkin, and placed it beside my plate as neatly as if I were leaving a fancy restaurant, not my own mother's holiday dinner. Okay, I said. Diane blinked, thrown off by how easy it sounded. Okay, she repeated. Yes, I said, voice steady. I'll leave. And then, without another word, I walked to the hallway where my coat hung. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me most. I put my coat on, took my keys from the bowl by the door, and stepped outside into the cold night air. The porch light cast a pale circle on the snow-dusted steps. My breath came out in white clouds. I sat in my car for a long moment, staring at my reflection in the windshield. My cheeks were flushed, but my eyes looked different, older, tired, in a way that didn't feel weak anymore. And then I did something I'd never done after one of Diane's attacks. I didn't go home and collapse. I went to the storage unit because the truth was, Diane thought I relied on the family. But the family, especially Diane, had been relying on me. Just not in the way they admitted 3 years earlier. When Diane decided she wanted to rebrand her boutique interior design business, she came to me with a fake sweet smile and a glass of wine like we were friends. You're good with computers, she'd said. You can help your mother. I was fresh out of a painful breakup, desperate to feel useful, desperate to feel wanted. I said yes. I built her website. I designed her logo, clean, modern, elegant. I created her social media templates. I wrote her client brochures. I even came up with her slogan, luxury that feels like home. At the time, I didn't charge her. She was my mother. I wanted her approval more than money, and it worked. Her business took off. Clients started pouring in. She posted photos of beautiful living rooms and smiling couples holding keys to newly renovated homes. Diane began introducing herself at parties like she was a self-made woman. She never mentioned me. When I finally asked for credit, just once, she laughed. Aria, she'd said, patting my cheek like I was 5. People don't care about the behind the scenes. They care about the brand. The brand, my work, her name. Then, 2 months ago, a client messaged Diane's business account asking for a custom interactive mood board portal like the one on her site. Diane panicked because she didn't know how any of it worked. She called me at midnight. Aria, she whispered urgently, I need you to fix something. It's broken. I'd stayed up until 3 a.m. troubleshooting. I did it because I still thought, if I help enough, she'll see me. But, at that holiday table, when she called me embarrassing and told me to stop relying on the family, something clicked into place, like a locked door finally opening. If Diane wanted me gone, fine, but she wasn't taking my work with me. At the storage unit, I opened a plastic bin labeled OLD laptops cables. Underneath the tangled cords was my old laptop, the one I'd used to build Diane's entire brand. I'd kept it because I'm the kind of person who backs things up. I'm the kind of person who plans, even when I'm pretending I'm not. I drove back to my studio and set the laptop on my tiny kitchen table. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wasn't going to destroy her business. I wasn't that kind of person. But I was also done being exploited. So I opened the folders, the logo files, the website code, the templates, the fonts I paid for, the stock photo licenses under my name, the domain settings, because yes, I'd registered it originally, and Diane had never bothered to transfer ownership properly. My heart pounded, not with panic, with power. I drafted an email to Diane, short and professional. Diane, you told me tonight to stop relying on the family and to leave. I'm honoring that going forward. I'm also ending my unpaid work supporting your business. Your website, branding assets, and digital materials were created by me and remain my intellectual property unless purchased under a written agreement. If you'd like to continue using them, my standard licensing fee is $8,500, or we can discuss a monthly support contract. Otherwise, you have 72 hours to remove my work from your platforms. REI stared at it for a long time before hitting send. My hands shook then, not because I was unsure, because for the first time, I was standing up to the woman who raised me to believe love had to be earned through suffering. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom flashed across the screen. I didn't answer. It rang again, and again. Then came the texts. Diane, what is this? Diane, you are being ridiculous. Diane, you can't do this to me. Diane : call me now. I let her messages sit like unanswered prayers. The next morning, she showed up at my studio. I heard her heels in the hallway before the knock, sharp, impatient, angry. When I opened the door, she stepped in like she owned the air. Her face was tight, her lipstick perfect, her eyes furious. What have you done? She hissed. Eyes furious. What have you done? She hissed. I closed the door calmly. Good morning to you too. This isn't funny, Arya. She shoved her phone in my direction. My site is clients can't access the portfolio. I blinked slowly. That's strange. Did you call your web developer? Her jaw clenched. You are my web developer. No, I said softly. I was your unpaid labor. She scoffed. I raised you. And you also humiliated me in front of everyone. I replied. You told me to leave. Diane's eyes flickered just for a second, like she hadn't expected consequences to have memory. That was, she began, then stopped, recalculating. That was tough love. I don't want your love if it comes with humiliation, I said. Her voice softened, weaponized. Arya, sweetheart, we were just worried about you. You're sensitive. You take things personally. I almost laughed. It was so familiar, her ability to rewrite reality like it was a script she controlled. I sent you options, I said. Pay the licensing fee, or remove my work. Her face hardened again. You think you can extort your own mother? I think, I said evenly, that you can't build what I built, and you've been taking credit for it for years. Diane opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted around my studio as if she was seeing the life she'd always dismissed. My small couch, my thrifted bookshelf, the framed prints I designed myself. This place is depressing, she muttered. I took a breath. Leave. Her head snapped up. Excuse me, you told me to leave last night, I said, voice steady. Now I'm telling you, leave. For a second, I thought she might slap me, but Diane cared too much about appearances. She stepped back, trembling with rage. You'll regret this, she spat. I met her gaze. Maybe, but I won't regret respecting myself. She left in a swirl of expensive perfume and anger. That afternoon, I got an email from one of Diane's clients, Marissa Holt, a woman I'd spoken to once during a late-night emergency fix. Marissa wrote, Hi Arya, Diane mentioned you handle her digital work. I'm actually looking for someone who can manage full branding and a website for my new wellness studio. Are you available? Your work is stunning. I read it twice. Stunned. Diane had mentioned me probably in panic, probably trying to push responsibility off herself. But she'd done it, and now a door was open. I replied immediately. Professional and warm. We scheduled a call. Marissa ended up signing a contract that week. My biggest client ever. The twist wasn't that I destroyed Diane, it was that I finally stopped destroying myself to keep her comfortable. Meanwhile, Diane's business started to wobble, not because I sabotaged it, but because the foundation she'd built on my work was never truly hers. She hired a cheap agency to recreate her branding, and it looked like every other interior design page on the internet. Generic fonts, bland colors, no personality. Clients noticed. Engagement dropped. Reviews got weirdly quiet. 2 weeks later, I received a final email from Diane. Not an apology. Diane didn't do apologies. Just a cold, clipped sentence. Send the invoice. When the payment came through, I stared at my bank account in disbelief. Not because of the money, though it mattered, because it was proof. She had tried to reduce me to nothing. And still, she had to pay for what I was worth. On New Year's Day, I didn't go to Diane's house. I didn't attend another performance dinner. I stayed in my studio, made coffee, and watched snow fall outside my window, like a quiet blessing. My phone buzzed with a message from Chloe. Chloe, I heard what happened. Mom's been mad for weeks. Chloe, but I think you did the right thing. Chloe, I wish I had your courage. I stared at the texts, feeling something warm and unfamiliar. Not guilt. Not fear. Peace. Because independence wasn't being kicked out. Independence was choosing myself without waiting for permission. And the best revenge wasn't watching Diane suffer. It was watching myself finally thrive. If you've ever been told you're too much by the very people who benefit from you the most, I want you to remember this. Your value doesn't disappear just because someone refuses to acknowledge it. If this story hit home, tap like, subscribe, and comment. I choose myself. And if you're in your own moment of quiet, packing mentally or physically, know this. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply building a life where you're no longer available for disrespect.